So, you've heard the promise of B2B intent data, right? That it'll magically find you customers who are ready to buy right now. The reality for most companies, though, it just creates a ton more noise than actual pipeline. So, how do you get it right? Well, today we're going to break down the blueprint that separates a total mess of a rollout from a proven success.
First, let's just get a sense of the scale we're talking about here. The buyer intent data market, it's already a massive, nearly $5 billion industry. And get this, it's projected to almost triple. Companies are pouring a fortune into this stuff, which means the pressure to get results is, well, it's huge. But here's the kicker. Despite all that cash being thrown around, the dirty little secret is that most companies are completely struggling. They can't actually show you in a clean, board-ready way that their investment is generating any new business. And this massive gap between the promise and the reality, that's where so many of these projects just completely fall apart.
And that brings us right to the heart of it, the intent data paradox. And look, we're going to start with a confession, drawing right from our source material's own experience, because their first attempt at this, it was a complete and total faceplant.
This is what went wrong. I mean, it's almost funny if it weren't so painful. Instead of focusing on the whole point, getting valuable buying signals to the sales team, the company got stuck in internal politics. They were literally arguing over who got credit for the dashboard, while the actual actionable data was just sitting there, getting ignored. It's a classic case of falling in love with the tool, not the outcome. And that whole story, it reveals the single biggest reason these projects fail. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what you're even trying to do. You see, you think you're just buying a signal, but what you really need is to build a system. Now, take a look at this, because this slide lays it all out. The difference is night and day. On the left, you've got the failed approach, thinking of intent data as just some simple plugin. A quick project that's all about the tool. But on the right, that's the successful approach, seeing it as a change to your entire operating model, a 90 to 180-day program that's focused on a specific business goal, like getting new customers. That mindset shift right there, that's everything. Okay, so if that's the big picture problem, where does it actually show up in the real world? We can pretty much group all the common mistakes into 3 major failure points. This is where good intentions just smash right into the reality of bad infrastructure. First up, a misaligned foundation. And this is the stuff that goes wrong before you even think about logging into a new tool. It all comes down to a lack of shared understanding and, frankly, poor data hygiene from day one. This quote from a VP of sales in our source material just hits the nail on the head. When your marketing team, your sales team, and your customer success team all have different definitions of what high intent even means, well, the signals become totally meaningless. The result? Pure chaos. And that leads to the other huge problem with the foundation. Let me be really clear about this. You can buy the best, cleanest intent data on the planet, but if you pump it into a CRM that's a mess of duplicate accounts and wrong info, you're not fixing anything. You're just shining a giant spotlight on the chaos that's already there.
All right, failure point number 2, fragmented technology. This is what happens when every department, marketing, sales, ops, just plugs the intent data into their own favorite tools without any kind of unified plan. All you do is create a bunch of digital silos and a really broken customer experience.
And you want to know what the result of that looks like? It's embarrassing. A real customer got 3 totally different messages about the same thing, all because the systems weren't talking to each other. I mean, that one question from a confused customer was a more accurate dashboard of the project's failure than any report you could ever build. The takeaway is simple. You need one integration plan, not 3. And that brings us to the third and maybe the most critical failure point of all, forgetting the people. You can design the most perfect, elegant system in the world, but if the sales reps who actually have to use it don't understand it, don't trust it, or don't see how it helps them, the entire project is completely worthless. But here's the flip side. When you get the people part right, oh man, the results are incredible. In a small pilot program, one rep saw an intent signal that a prospect was researching fleet insurance. They used that tiny piece of information to write the perfect opening line. That deal, it closed in just 26 days instead of the usual 90. Trust me, that one success story did more to get buy-in from the team than 100 training sessions.
Okay, so we've seen the paradox, we've seen the common pitfalls. That naturally leads us to the most important question, right? How do you actually do this? How do you build the right operating model and not fall into all the same traps? All right, let's get into the good stuff, the solution. Here it is, the proven 5-phase blueprint for a successful rollout. And this isn't just theory, okay? This is a practical step-by-step plan that was built directly from the painful lessons of that first failed attempt.
And it's a pretty logical plan when you break it down. First, phase 1, discovery and alignment. That's where you define what you're doing and get everyone on the same page. Then, phase 2 is design, where you map out how all the data will flow. Phase 3 is the actual build, the technical integrations. Phase 4 is a small-scale test with a dedicated pilot group. And finally, phase 5 is the full rollout. And importantly, refine. You're treating it like a real program, not a one-and-done project.
But, and this is a big but, a global blueprint has to be smart about local rules. For example, in the US, you probably have a lot more data freedom, but you try that in Europe? GDPR is king, so consent and privacy have to be your top priority. And over in APAC, your whole model might need to support partners and distributors, not just your direct sales team. A one-size-fits-all approach is doomed to fail.
So, we've gone through the problem and the blueprint for a solution. Let's bring this right down to earth. What can you do right now, like in the next 15 minutes, to actually get started on the right path?
Here are 4 super simple things you can do immediately. First, run the 60-second risk check from the source material. It'll show you where you're weakest. Second, just grab a whiteboard and sketch out how data moves between your systems right now. Third, and this is key, be disciplined. Choose just one business goal to focus on first. And finally, draft a simple one-page version of that blueprint we just looked at.
In the end, it really all boils down to this one simple question that you have to ask yourself and your team. Is this just another shiny gadget for everyone to play with, or are you ready to treat it as a fundamental change to your company's operating model? Because your answer to that question will determine whether you're telling a story of wasted budget or one of record-breaking growth.